And you can also do this with grammar. I came up with these 6 sentences after much experimentation. Having a native speaker allow you to deconstruct their grammar by translating these sentences into past, present, future. We'll show you subject, object, verb, placement of indirect, direct objects, gender, and so forth. From that point, you can then, if you want to acquire multiple languages, alternate them so there's no interference. And we can talk about that if anyone's interested. And now, I love languages. So ballroom dancing, implicit versus explicit. Very important. You might look at me and say, that guy must be a ballroom dancer. But no, you'd be wrong. Because my body is very poorly designed for most things, pretty well designed for lifting heavy rocks, perhaps. And I used to be much bigger, much more muscular, and so I ended up walking like this. I looked a lot like a orangutan, our close cousins, or the Incredible Hulk. Not very good for ballroom dancing. I found myself in Argentina in 2005, decided to watch a tango class, had no intention of participating. Went in, paid my 10 pesos, walked up, 10 women, 2 guys, usually a good ratio. The instructor says, you are participating. Immediately, death sweat. Fight or flight, fear sweat, because I tried ballroom dancing in college, stepped on the girl's foot with my heel, she screamed. I was so concerned with her perception of what I was doing that it exploded in my face, never to return to the ballroom dancing club. She comes up, and this was her approach to teaching. Okay, come on, grab me. Gorgeous assistant instructor. She was very pissed off that I had pulled her from her advanced practice. So I did my best, didn't know where to put my hands, and she pulled back, threw down her arms, put them on her hips, turned around and yelled across the room, this guy's built like a goddamn mountain of muscle, and he's grabbing me like a fucking Frenchman. Which I found encouraging. Everyone burst into laughter. I was humiliated. She came back. She goes, come on, I don't have all day. As someone who wrestled since age 8, I proceeded to crush her, of mice and men style. And she looked up and said, now that's better. So I bought a month's worth of classes. And proceeded to look at, I wanted to set competition, so I'd have a deadline, Parkinson's law, the complexity, perceived complexity of a task will expand to fill the time you allot it. So I had a very short deadline for a competition. I got a female instructor first to teach me the female role, the follow, because I wanted to understand the sensitivities and abilities that the follow need to develop, so I wouldn't have a repeat of college. And then I took an inventory of the characteristics, along with her, of the capabilities and elements of different dancers who had won championships. And then I interviewed these people, because they all taught in Buenos Aires, and I compared the 2 lists. And what you find is that there's explicitly expertise they recommended, certain training methods, and then there were implicit commonalities that none of them seemed to be practicing. Now, the protectionism of Argentine dance teachers aside, I found this very interesting. So I decided to focus on 3 of those commonalities. Long steps, so a lot of milongueros, the tango dancers, will use very short steps, and I found that longer steps were much more elegant, so you can have, and you can do it in a very small space, in fact. Secondly, different types of pivots. Thirdly, variation in tempo. These seem to be the 3 areas that I could exploit to compete if I wanted to compete against people who've been practicing for 20 to 30 years. That photo is of the semifinals of the Buenos Aires Championships 4 months later. Then 1 month later, went to the World Championships, made it to the semifinal, and then set a world record following that 2 weeks later. I want you to see part of what I practiced. And I'm going to jump forward here. But this is the instructor that Alicia and I chose for the male lead. His name is Gabriel Misé, one of the most elegant dancers of his generation, known for his long steps and his tempo changes and his pivots. Alicia, in her own right, very famous. So I think you'll agree they look quite good together. Now, what I like about this video is it's actually a video of the first time they ever danced together because of his lead. He had a strong lead. And he didn't lead with his chest, which requires you to lean forward. I couldn't develop the attributes in my toes, the strength in my feet to do that. So he uses a lead that focuses on his shoulder girdle and his arm. So he can lift the woman to break her, for example, as just one benefit of that. So then we broke it down. This would be an example of one pivot. This is a back step pivot. There are many different types, and I have hundreds of hours of footage. all categorized much like George Carlin categorized his comedy. So using my arch nemesis, Spanish no less, to learn tango. So fear is your friend. Fear is an indicator. Sometimes it shows you what you shouldn't do. More often than not, it shows you exactly what you should do. And the best results that I've had in life, the most enjoyable times, have all been from asking a simple question: what's the worst that can happen? Especially with fears that you gained when you were a child. Take the analytical frameworks, the capabilities you have, apply them to old fears, apply them to very big dreams. And when I think of what I fear now, it's very simple. When I imagine my life, what my life would have been like, without the educational opportunities that I had, it makes me wonder. And I've spent the last 2 years trying to deconstruct the American public school system to either fix it or replace it, and have done experiments with about 50,000 students thus far, built, I'd say, about a half dozen schools with my readers at this point. And if any of you are interested in that, I would love to speak with you. I know nothing, I'm a beginner, but I ask a lot of questions, and I would love your advice. Thank you very much.